Welcome to the greatest podcast in sports betting entertainment. My name is Tanner Kern, certified G, bona fide stud, and you can't teach that. In this right here, this is G Money Grant Mitchell. We are here breaking down part of the college football playoff first round bracket and the NBA Cup finals tonight. Grant, why did they change it from the in-season tournament to the NBA Cup? We got to figure out the branding here.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. They're still working on the branding. They're still technically the same thing because last year it was still the NBA Cup and this year it's still the in-season tournament. I think that, again, ratings, marketing, branding, whatever, maybe it didn't go down as well as they had hoped for last year. So they're switching the primary moniker of it this time around. NBA Cup also brings more of this was built out of the European soccer tradition, right? So if you go through some of the competitions over there, like you've got the FA Cup, you've got the DFB Pokal, all those names. They're short and sweet. The in-season tournament it doesn't sound official. It's kind of wordy. It takes a little to get to. So I think the NBA Cup, it's snappier. It's quicker.
Well, the league usually does a good job. Like the NBA is one of the best leagues for handling just in general everything, in my opinion. I don't know about you. But last year, I felt like in-season tournament was pushed the entire time. Like you'd look on FanDuel, and maybe I'm wrong, but it was like in-season tournament. Now it's NBA Cup.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The NBA is still trying to get this thing going, and there's been a lot of smoke recently that the NBA ratings are down, and I'm sure it's true. I think it's misleading with the rise of streaming. Those numbers, it's going to be hard for us to ever really get representative numbers anymore just because of how many different streaming options there are, legal and illegal. But I believe the NBA viewership overall is going down. I believe that a lot of fans aren't maybe as passionate as they used to be. So the NBA is this is their new brainchild. This is the thing that they're trying to use to kind of revive the competitiveness early in the season. So they're going to mess around with it. They're going to tinker with it, and they're going to do what they feel is best to make it the best possible product.
And you're also competing with the college football playoff, which is not easy to compete with because everybody is talking about the college football playoff, and we're talking about the college football playoff today. But Grant, before we talk about the CFP, why don't you tell them why they should visit WSN?
Yes, there's a lot of letters being floated around right there. But if you are into sports betting, WSN.com is the number one place to be. You've got expert previews of games, betting picks, player props, news, analysis, all that stuff from myself, Tanner, and a whole bunch of people over on the team. We all do some great work together. So any sport, basketball, baseball, football, hockey, soccer, whatever you want, you'll find it over there. And you're also going to be eligible for some promo codes at sportsbooks. They get you more opportunities. We are running contests all the time, NFL season, March Madness, etc. So bottom line, you're into sports betting, WSN.com is where you want to go.
100%. So today we're going to talk about the first two games on the slate, which is Indiana and Notre Dame kicking off on Friday night. Then the first game on Saturday, SMU versus Penn State. On Thursday or Friday, I should say, we'll talk Clemson, Texas, and then Tennessee, Ohio State. We're also going to talk NBA Cup today as well. But Grant, let's start with Indiana versus Notre Dame. Battle of Indiana. This is going to be a really cool game. I would love to see Indiana knock off Notre Dame. I don't know if it's possible. But at the same time, too, everyone's saying Notre Dame's a legitimate contender. Everyone's saying Notre Dame can play. They haven't played anyone either. So Indiana has been just as battle-tested, in my opinion, as Notre Dame has. Would you agree with that?
I do. I was actually raising my hand there to interject, but I think you're so locked in on what you were saying, you didn't see it. I was actually going to go back to your transition real quick, where you're talking about the NBA trying to compete with the college football playoff. Of all the weekends to give us two NFL games on Saturday, why would you make a college football playoff weekend? I don't understand that.
Because the NFL is king. Like the NFL is still king. There will be there's people that don't watch college football that watch the NFL, watch NFL, don't watch college football. I think that'll change in the coming years. But again, this was the first year of the 12 team. So it's a little harder.
Do you think they feel, I think they're two options maybe. Either they feel threatened, which I think is less likely. I think the more likely alternative is they're just trying to steal the market. Like they saw the NBA was doing well on Christmas, so they said, you know what, NFL games on Christmas. College football playoff is here. Well, we're putting two Saturday games there.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I think with the NFL, they're still king. Like the NFL does not bow down to anybody. Like the people bow down to the NFL, where this college football playoff at the beginning of the season, I don't think anyone could have ever guessed how exciting and how much this thing is being debated. Like I have no connections to SEC football besides I love watching college football. I'm talking like I was defending Alabama like I went to Alabama. And that's a lot of people in this college football playoff era right now. So I don't think the NFL could have ever predicted that this was going to be so popular.
To get back on track here and to answer your kind of your questions about Indiana Notre Dame. So, like I mentioned earlier, we put out a bunch of game previews on WSN.com that includes every matchup of the college football playoff. I was responsible for Indiana Notre Dame, so I hold this one a little near and dear to my heart. And Tanner, it's funny you said that because I hadn't heard anybody say this. And then I put it in writing when I was making my preview, and you just said it here. So we're on the same page. Great minds think alike. I said that if you focus on brand bias and name recognition, Indiana has a lot more to prove than Notre Dame. You know, Indiana had, I think Indiana had 2 winning seasons since 1993. And this was the first time in the history of their program they had won double-digit games in a season. And that's compared to Notre Dame, who we know one of the most storied programs there is. They've been to the college football playoff, the 4-team bracket a couple of times already. But if you look at their schedules, like you said, Notre Dame has not proven anything more than Indiana has. They're 4-0 against ranked teams, but if you want to look at those teams, it was Texas A&M in the first game of the season with Connor Wigman at quarterback, who is now transferred out of the program to Houston, against Army, against Navy, and against Louisville. Though none of those wins to me are more impressive than Indiana just beating a bunch of unranked teams in the Big Ten the entire season. And what are the teams' 1 losses for both of them? Well, for Notre Dame, it's at home against Northern Illinois. By the way, off of the back of that Texas A&M win. And for Indiana, it's on the road at Ohio State. So if I look at the wins, I guess Notre Dame might get this slight edge, but I don't look at it really as them tipping the scales. And if you look at the loss, it's clear. Like that, Indiana has one of the most understandable losses in the entire country. It's right up there with Ohio State losing by 1 to Oregon on the road. If you look at the actual metrics, these teams are incredibly similar from points scored, points allowed, third down offense, yards per play allowed. They are extremely similar. Their strength of schedules are relatively similar. So for the life of me, I can't figure out why Notre Dame is favored by 7.5 points. They might go on to win by that or more. They might cover this line. And if so, I'll tip my hat to them. Good to them. I'm just saying I would not set the spread where it is.
Well, it's brand bias too. And we got to keep in mind, like, I think a touchdown looks bigger than it is because like we're used to the NFL as well. Like it's weird to see first round games as touchdown spreads, but anyone can win a touchdown game in college football. And we know that. We've talked about it. It comes down to brand. It comes down to people not respecting Indiana. And yes, is Indiana one of the top 12 talent teams in the country? I can't sit here and say they are right now. I can't sit here and say they're better than a South Carolina or a Bama or an Ole Miss that got left out talent-wise. But I sure as hell can say that they can play with Notre Dame because Notre Dame's quarterback is Riley Leonard. And I love Riley Leonard. I love how he's going to prayer study and Bible study and getting the boys together. But I'll tell you what, he's not a good quarterback. He's not good enough to take Notre Dame to the promised land. So Notre Dame's got to run the football exceptionally well in this game, and they got to play really good defense and shut down Indiana's run game. But overall, I think Indiana, when you look at just talent alone with Indiana and Notre Dame has the brand bias, and Notre Dame probably has the more talented football team. But 7.5, like you're saying, is a pretty big number when Indiana's got nothing to lose. I think they're going to play like that in this game.
So I want to build off of what you said there because I fully agree. Again, one of the points I made was Riley Leonard has serious limitations, and Notre Dame is going to have to lean into the running game. There's no doubt about that. Indiana ranked 2nd in run defense this season. They allowed 2.6 yards per carry. Now, I understand there's a difference between Northwestern and Notre Dame, but when Indiana played Ohio State didn't even manage 4 yards per carry. And you're not going to tell me Notre Dame has a significantly better running game than Ohio State. I don't even know if I would believe they'd actually have a better running game than Ohio State. So the matchup, the way it shakes out, despite how similar these teams are, I think it could be tougher for Notre Dame to overcome the obstacles than it could for Indiana. Also, Riley Leonard, who has had a solid season. I don't want to take it away from him. He's got 30 total touchdowns. He attempted more than 30 passes in the first 2 games of the season. That was against A&M and then against Northern Illinois. Wasn't working right. Since that point, he has only thrown the ball more than 30 times 1 time. So the goal is clearly to take the ball out of his hands. He also has not thrown for more than 229 yards in a game. I know Indiana looked totally outmatched against Ohio State, but we talked about it. They were supposed to. These are low major, mid-major, and FCS kids who were not high recruits, not coming from big programs. So when you go on the road at Ohio State, it's the toughest competition you've ever played. It's the toughest environment you've ever played. It's the most expectations you've ever had. Of course, they were going to look terrible. That's out the window. They have that experience now, and they get to come back against Notre Dame. If they can not even shut down, but if they can just do what they've done every game this season against that Notre Dame running game, and it becomes Riley Leonard having to make plays, Notre Dame is in a world of trouble.
Yeah, this is not as easy of a first-round game as you would expect for Notre Dame. I think Penn State going against SMU has the much easier path to the quarterfinal because I'm more scared of Indiana than I am of SMU.
Yeah, and this is the thing too. Indiana's kind of they're like a wild card here because if they win this game, let's say they win, I don't know, they win 31-24, right? They've got some momentum. They're going to face Georgia at a neutral field. Georgia, by the way, I have some inside information. Okay?
Georgia's going to blow them off the field, Grant. Don't even run this. Georgia's going to blow them off the field.
Listen, I have some inside information. I'm being serious. This is from someone on the Georgia team. It's someone on the staff.
Do they have an important position? Do they have an important position on the staff?
Yes.
Like rank it on a scale 1 to 10. 10 being a coordinator.
6.
Okay. So they're maybe an assistant position coach or the equipment guy.
They said Carson Beck is thinking about trying to play in the playoff. I took that and I said, I'm sure that's what you want to say. That's what he wants to say. I don't think he'll physically be able to. I think he's got a torn UCL and he's going to be out for months. But apparently that is what is being put out there. That's all I know.
I personally think, well, first of all, I'm reading an article right now on the Midwest Orthopedics, Georgia Bulldog, about Carson Beck. See if he can play in this game. They're saying it's a type 1 injury, small tears. He may be able to play in the college football playoff. Type 2 tears involved a partial failure or ligament. So if Carson, I don't think they've revealed what level tear it is, have they?
That would suggest it would be that type 1 tear, what they're saying.
So personally, if Carson Beck does play in the college football playoff and he's healthy, I think Georgia is going to be just fine. I don't think Indiana or Notre Dame can challenge Georgia. I don't think anyone on the lower part of the bracket can challenge Georgia. If Georgia plays up to being Georgia, I think coaching wise, if you look at the coaches here in the bottom half of the bracket, Kirby Smart can outcoach every single one of these guys, especially James Franklin. So I would love to see that matchup. But when you're looking at Gunnar Stockton, kid's a bulldog. That kid's going to be better than Carson Beck. And if you give Kirby 3 weeks to prepare for him, now probably 2 weeks because the kid got his brain knocked out. But if you give him 2 weeks to prepare, I think he's going to be just fine in the college football playoff. He might not be able to outduel Dylan Royola. Not Dylan Royola, Dylan Gabriel. I always say that. But I think he's good enough to get to the championship game.
So I'm not disagreeing with you, right? Like, I would be crazy because we've seen what Georgia looks like at their best. And it's not that SEC championship game, although they still won the SEC championship not playing at their best. It's that game at Texas. And I mean, they weren't at their best either. Carson Beck had 3 interceptions, no touchdowns. So you would be crazy to say Georgia at their best isn't better than Indiana at its best. But I don't know that they will be there. You know, I love that they're getting this time off with Kirby, and Kirby is the best coach in the sport, so you would think you would have them ready. but it is a sophomore quarterback who has little to no playing experience at this level. And if Indiana, again, let's say Indiana beats Notre Dame, they will have just won on the road. They'll have all the momentum in the world. They will be sharp as well because they will have just played, the 10 days before. So I could see it being close. And I'm getting these odds from FanDuel. They published their hypothetical odds. If we get Georgia versus Indiana at a neutral field, as of today, Georgia would be favored by 6.5 points. So they're saying Notre Dame at home should have an easier time beating Indiana than Georgia would at a neutral venue.
With a quarterback problem.
Well, you just told me that Gunnar Stockton was going to be better than Carson Beck.
No, but that's adjusting the line. I meant like long term. That's adjusting the line though. If Carson Beck is healthy, they're probably a 8.5 point favorite. I think Carson moved the line a couple points.
Yeah, I would say 8, 9, something in that region would be right. Again, I want to make this clear. I'm not saying Indiana would beat Georgia. I'm saying we need to forget about the Ohio State game as like that was proof that they can never compete. That was the first time that they've been subjected to those types of conditions and that context. And when they get back to it, if they do get back to it, they will be better.
The college football playoff, when I'm really going down the list, it's the college football playoff of no quarterbacks. Like, how many good quarterbacks are in the college football playoff? Not many.
It's funny because we're talking about Indiana. Curtis Rourke is up there for the best quarterback in the college football playoff.
Yeah,
I mean, Dylan Gabriel is obviously number one, but
yeah, the only quarterback who can go out and win a football game for you in the college football playoff. Maybe you can make the case for Nico with Tennessee, maybe, but he will be the best quarterback in the country. He's not there yet. Dylan Gabriel is the only quarterback in this group, and I will say if Carson Beck was healthy and dealing, Carson Beck could do it too. But Carson Beck being the second best quarterback in the college football playoff right now, maybe the kid from Clemson, what's his name, Grant?
Klubnik.
Maybe Klubnik you can make an argument for.
I was going to say it might be Kevin Jennings at SMU.
Nah, dude, he's too undisciplined. I watching him play. It might be. He might have the highest upside, but I don't know. It could, like, Drew Aller is in the mix for top quarterbacks here, which is crazy.
It is. You're right. I'm fully taking it in here, and like Gabriel's the only guy you feel like I know what I'm getting from him every week.
Yeah, I mean, Will Howard is trash.
I mean, talking about consistency, Will Howard was awesome against Oregon, but then he's been terrible in other games too. So, like, what's it going to be? How's he going to play in the playoff? Will
Howard slid, Grant, with no timeouts.
No, that was Dak. I think did Will throw it out? Did he throw it out of bounds or did he run out of bounds? Whatever it was.
He slid at the end of the game.
I thought the ball went out of bounds. I thought Dak slid. It's not important. He ran the clock out.
Will Howard run for 12 yards to the Oregon 26.
Yeah.
You should have ran for 6 yards and then slid. They had a timeout, didn't they?
I don't think so.
No, they don't. They must have not. Yeah, he had to. Interesting job by Will Howard. I don't think Will Howard's really good. I think the only quarterback that can go out and win the college football playoff is Dylan Gabriel. Like, by him, not single-handedly, but he's a quarterback that I trust with 2 minutes left in the game to put a drive together. I don't trust anyone else. Maybe Klubnik's probably the second best quarterback here, if I have to make the argument.
I would say that's probably right.
It's not Quinn Ewers.
It's not Quinn Ewers. Nico has the highest ceiling of everybody else, but he's not been great against ranked SEC teams. He's a freshman. Like, you're probably not expecting a lot from him.
Yeah. All right, Grant. Let's talk about SMU Penn State.
So you going Indiana spread there?
I'll take Indiana spread. I think Notre Dame will win the game. It's hard to shake the brand bias, but I'll take Indiana spread.
Indiana upset.
I hope it happens. I really do. I think that's a much easier matchup for Georgia than Notre Dame, truthfully. Because if Notre Dame, what?
I think Notre Dame would be harder to beat, but it would be easier for Notre Dame to lose. Does that make any sort of sense? I don't
Yeah,
think Notre Dame could beat them. There's not a world where I see them scoring enough points to beat them. I just think they wouldn't give up that many points.
I agree. I truthfully don't think Indiana has the team to beat Notre Dame if Notre Dame starts running the football. If this just becomes a who can run the ball better and who can stop the run better, it's probably Notre Dame.
Uh, Probably. But I mean, Indiana's run defense was awesome again all year and against Ohio State. We'll see.
We just don't know. We don't know. It's hard to. Indiana has not been tested at all this year. Notre Dame has not been tested at all this year. SMU has not been tested. Penn State's barely been tested. Ohio State has kind of been tested, right? Tennessee has not been tested, or Tennessee's been tested. Texas has not been tested. Like all these teams, nobody knows what we're going to get because they haven't played anybody.
Yeah, or if they did, then they lost. So
Yeah.
I mean, what do you take from that?
So they're 11-0 against bad teams, and they're 0-1 or 0-2 against good teams. That's what we take from these games. So it'll be interesting to see, and we're making matchups that we would never see. SMU Penn State though, Grant. I personally do not think SMU should be they are not one of the top 12 teams in the country as far as talent goes. However, they did their job and blah, 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 and they didn't get blown out in the ACC championship game. Whoop-de-freaking do. I think Penn State is going to lay the smacketh down on the SMU Mustangs in this football game.
So they should. And I talked about this on one of the previous shows, which is if you dig into the metrics and you run projections and everything, Penn State is actually up there for one of the best teams in the country. Like, I'm not saying one of the best, like 12, they're in the playoff. Duh. I'm saying like top 2, top 3. Yeah. That was before the Big Ten championship. And obviously a lot of their defensive numbers took a hit because Oregon laid it on them, but their offense was really good in that game too. Point I'm making here is Penn State should win this game. Like they're Penn State. They're just bigger. They should be better. They've got more money. They've got more experience. This is what should happen. James Franklin, and I don't want to pick on the guy, but he just cannot, for the life of him, get his team to win a big game. He just can't do it. SMU was better than Clemson, but Clemson went out there and they won that game. And I put a lot of...
No, SMU's not better than Clemson, Grant.
They're absolutely better than Clemson, but
No,
I put a lot of Clemson winning that ACC championship game on the shoulders of Dabo. I think he had his team ready to go, and there's just something to be said about having a coach that's been through the fire, is experienced. And so if this game is back and forth, then I would probably honestly say, well, I think James Franklin's going to lose this one, versus it's like, okay, I think Dabo's going to help them win this game. I still think Penn State should win this game. But I mean, we were just talking about it. Kevin Jennings is he's a wild card. He's undisciplined. He's going to make mistakes, but he's also going to make some huge plays. SMU was one of the most explosive teams in the country. Was it against the stiff competition of the SEC or the best teams of the Big Ten? No, but they still did go out there and do it. And Penn State, as we saw, just gave up, 45 points to Oregon. So I think this could kind of surprisingly maybe be a very high scoring matchup. I would lean toward Penn State, but I'm kind of torn about who I want to take on the spread.
I would lay the points with Penn State. I think this is the game that people watch and they say, well, SMU was good, but they weren't good enough. Like remember the last time we had the participation trophy game? When was that in the college football playoff? Where the team, like, why can't I think of this? Was it Washington? It wasn't Washington.
Are you talking about when Cincinnati got in?
No, not Cincinnati.
Well, TCU got in.
TCU was the last participation trophy team to
Michigan,
get in.
Though. They beat Michigan in the semifinal.
Weren't they down 21-0 though?
I don't remember, but who cares? That makes it even more impressive.
No, 100%. But like, this is the game where we're going to see the Big Ten talent take over the American Conference talent and the Miami Hurricane talent that transferred to SMU. We're going to see that in this football game. I truly believe that this is a big game, and James Franklin can't win big games, but this is also the smallest of the games that James Franklin is going to have to coach in this college football playoff. I think it's more likely he loses in the semifinal than it is in the first round to SMU, who honestly, Clemson exposed. Clemson exposed this team for not being very good.
Yeah, I mean, SMU is kind of similar to Indiana to a much lesser extent. Like they weren't experienced with those sorts of environments. It's different winning the American and then in your first year trying to go in the ACC. But Ohio State was a lot better than Clemson is, and SMU is more experienced than Indiana, so they don't get that excuse as much. I would probably lay the points with Penn State. Honestly, the biggest thing for me would be the physicality in the running game for Penn State. I think that's what you would have to lean on. Drew Allar had his moments against Oregon, but he also threw the game away. So again, if this thing is tight, if this is a 4 or 5 point game with 2 minutes left, and I've got Drew Allar, James Franklin on one side, I would feel great as an SMU bettor. I would think, yeah, they're going to make a mistake, and we're going to get a chance here to cover this spread. But as long as they keep it more than a one-score game outside of those final 2-3 minutes, then I think Penn State would be the better bet.
If Penn State doesn't run them over, there's a problem in this football game. Like Penn State's really got no chance of doing much if they don't run them over. I look at Penn State as a team that legitimately could be in the semifinal pretty easily. I mean, if you're James Franklin, you got all the money in the world and you can't beat SMU and then go follow it up with a win over Boise State, you got problems. You need to go. You need to get fired.
I want to look at the hypothetical odds for Penn State, Boise State. So they've got FanDuel has Penn State as an 11.5 point favorite over Boise State. I would hammer Boise State.
Wow, that's more than SMU. I probably would too, but when it comes down to it, Boise State, and you can talk about, okay, they played Oregon tough. Oregon in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season did not look anything like a legitimate contender. They were terrible. So Penn State has the physicality. I don't think Boise State has seen that physicality at all. They are bigger up front. They spend more money on their football team. 11, yeah. I probably don't want to lay 11.5 points with a team that doesn't really have a quarterback and a coach that can't win a big game, but I understand why the line is set like that. And I don't think it has to do with brand bias as much as the fact that Penn State's just a much better football team.
No, I get it too. And you're right in everything you said. The reason that I would definitely lay the points, or not lay the points, I would take the points with Boise State there, is if we go back and we look at some of Penn State's biggest wins. I'm looking at their schedule, and West Virginia's at the top of it. You look at some of their big wins this year, their games against ranked teams. They beat Illinois 21-7, which I know would cover 11.5, but point is you only scored 21. You only score 13 against Ohio State. You give up 45 to Oregon. It's 33-30 with USC, who finished the year 500. You beat Minnesota by 1 point. Like they weren't blowing quality teams out at all, really. And not only that, they either weren't scoring a lot or they were giving up a lot of points. With Boise State, you've got the best player in the country, maybe the second best if you want to say Travis Hunter. That's going to translate. I know Penn State, has got this great run defense and they're physical and everything, but you're going to be able to lean into that in those big moments. And Penn State's not going to go into a game against Boise State feeling like we need to dominate the air and throw the heck out of the football. They're going to want to run the ball too. They're going to want to control the clock. And I just think naturally that lends itself to a low scoring game. I think that's like a 2014, something like that. And I just don't see how Penn State wins by 2 touchdowns.
I don't either, but I think the narrative we're going to get, which is most of the time that plays out when we pretty much can predict the narrative a lot of times in college sports, especially I think in this era of NIL. And the most likely thing to happen in these games, most likely, I'm not saying these are going to happen. Notre Dame's going to beat Indiana because they're Notre Dame. I don't know how, but they're going to beat them. And I think that's a little less likely than the top of the bracket taking shape. Penn State beats SMU. Then we go play Boise State versus Penn State. Ashton Jeanty doesn't do a lot. He rushes for 100 yards. He gets shut down, and people say, well, that's why he was able to rush for all those yards, because he wasn't playing anybody. Like that trajectory is more likely to happen than SMU knocks off Penn State because Penn State doesn't show up, and then Boise State wins and they go to the semifinal. The teams with money tend to win the football games. The teams with money have better talent. That's probably what the narrative is going to be in the college football playoff. Like, we're covering up the fact that this is still a 4-team college football playoff: Oregon, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State. I'd say a 5-team maybe, right? But it's still a 4-team college football playoff, even though there's 12 teams invited to the party.
I would say the teams that you would really look at as they would be there in a normal 14 year would be Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, and then I think you could maybe group Penn State in that, and then Indiana, Notre Dame would be your traditional like 5, 6 seeds.
Yeah, but if you're looking at, and I don't have a lot of respect for Texas, but I'm going to say they have a chance to win because of their path and the fact that they may get Georgia for the third time in the national championship game. But Oregon, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, anyone else, I think the winners will be one of those four teams, potentially Penn State because of their path, but I don't see them beating Oregon again. I don't see them beating Oregon at all. They could maybe beat Texas, but there's really 5 teams I think that could win this thing, most likely 4.
I would add, if I'm looking for a dark horse, I would throw Tennessee in there.
Yeah.
But I mean, that would be tough to beat Ohio State and Oregon. That's also why if they do that, then it's like, they figured something out. They're going to win it all. But that's hard to do.
Yeah, that's going to be very, very hard to do. I think the one thing, though, we'll talk about top of the bracket later on, but think for Tennessee is like you're facing an Ohio State team that's a wounded duck in the first round. If you go in there and score early, it's going to be like, oh shit, what's going on here? So they have a route to victory there for sure. But we'll talk about that on Thursday, Grant.
We will. You want to get this rolling with the NBA in-season tournament?
Yes, the NBA Cup that so many people are talking about right now, Grant. Big stuff.
The Milwaukee Bucks taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's good to see the Bucks are a good basketball team again. They won 10 of their last 12. I mean, they were horrible for so long. I don't know. They might still be under 500. They probably are still under 500 since Doc Rivers took over, but they're playing really well lately. And the biggest thing for me watching their games is that they just look comfortable and they're closing out games. That's kind of the mark of great teams, is your ability to win no matter what's happening. That's why we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs the way we do. They have not been blowing teams out. It's not been pretty, but they always win these one-score games because they're comfortable in them. Milwaukee, I believe, is 4th in clutch net rating in the in-season tournament. So especially in these games, Damian Lillard had a big 3 at the end against the Magic. They were able to hold off the Hawks. They're playing well. On the other side, you got the Thunder, who don't know if you know this, Tanner, but the Thunder actually have the second best net rating in the history of the NBA. Only the 95-96 Chicago Bulls were better. So statistically, they are playing at an all-time historic level. They've also been really good in the in-season tournament. Shea's balling. So this is going to be a fun game. That's all I know.
I'm probably leaning towards the Oklahoma City Thunder to cover the spread here. I think Shea puts the team on his back, finds a way to win. Bucks are good. Like you said, the Bucks are starting to play good basketball, but I don't know if they're necessarily back yet. And we're looking at a OKC team that's definitely the favorite in the West. So we're going to see, I think, how good Oklahoma City is in a big spot tonight. But also, do these players consider this a big spot? I don't know. Like, I still can't get a read on this game.
Last year, it was clear that some teams took it more seriously than others. I think the Lakers definitely took it the most serious of anybody, and they ended up winning. So it speaks to if the mentality of the team is right, it's going to give you a real shot to win here. Now, I think the Bucks will be ready to go just because things have been so tough under Doc Rivers, and they're finally playing well. I think they'll be excited, and also Dame's never won an NBA Finals. He's never even been to one. So this is a chance for him to get some hardware. And on the other side, the Thunder are just young. It's just a bunch of kids. They're always trying their best. You know what I mean? They have the best defense in the league. They lead the league in points off of turnovers. Like, those are stats that equate to hard work. So I think you're going to get their best effort pretty much no matter what's happening.
Yeah, this is a good stat right here. Giannis's team, and I think this probably includes maybe all-star games too as well, because it's Giannis's team, but this is on DK Trends. Giannis's team has won each of its last 7 games with him playing against Shea.
Huh.
It's kind of a wild stat. That's got to be all-star games too, right?
I don't know if it has to be. It could.
Could be, yeah. I got to look into that. Damian Lillard has scored 25 plus in 8 of the Bucks' last 9 games. Another
Yeah,
big
his
step.
line's at 23.5 tonight. I understand. Glad you mentioned that. That's my favorite player prop in this game. Dame over 23.5 points. I know that the Thunder's defense is excellent. It truly is. And they hold teams to the lowest 3-point percentage in the league. As you know, and as everybody watching this probably knows, great players can't be stopped. If you are truly the best of the best, there is no defense that can slow you down. And Dame is starting to play at that level again. Not that he's better than Steph or Luka or whoever, but he's up there of that level. Like, I'm unstoppable right now. And if we're to assume this game's going to be close, that he's going to get the ball in his hands over and over and over down the stretch in the fourth quarter. He can shoot. He can draw a lot of fouls. I just think that line's a little low.
It's ridiculous that you're getting Shea's 30-plus points, and he has scored it in 8 of the Thunder's last 9 games, but you're 30-plus for him's minus 195. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's good. And he's actually, I think he's averaging 31, 6, and 5. And people just don't talk about him. It's wild. And he's only 26 years old. He's as old as Tatum. And we look at Tatum as, this guy could be the leader of a dynasty for the next 10 years. We don't talk about Shea at all. It's probably has to do with him being in OKC. His style, he doesn't dunk and he doesn't shoot threes, so maybe it's not the most exciting style in the world, but the guy produces and he's consistent, and you got to respect that.
Grant, Jason Tatum is the best player in basketball.
No, it's not even. No.
Jason Tatum is the greatest player to ever take the floor for the Boston Celtics, Grant. What are you talking about?
Absolutely not.
Jason Tatum is that guy.
Look, what Nikola Jokic is doing this season is wild.
Grant, the Celtics have already won 6 championships under Jason Tatum. Like, that's what they're going to win. It's already been locked up.
So Tatum is Michael Jordan in the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, that's the dynasty has already happened, and I'll thank Steve Kerr for that because he helped form this dynasty.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. I'm actually, speaking of the Celtics' potential dynasty, it is going to be interesting to see what happens with some of their guys. Like Al Horford is old as dirt. Drew Holiday's 34, and he's not the most important player on their team, but he's getting up there. And you're paying your guys a ton of money. So it's going to be hard to kind of rework this roster 2-3 years down the line. That will probably determine if this is a real dynasty or not.
Well, they got to win this year, but they've already won this year. So that's the thing.
If you look at the betting odds, it's a 2-horse race. Like, it's them and OKC. They've pretty much already decided that's what the finals is going to be.
And if you get Boston versus OKC in the finals, what's the series price? Celtics minus 200 at least.
I would say 190, 200 is probably fair.
Yeah, 190, 200. I mean, and if they go up against Dallas, it's even more. If they go up against Dallas, Denver, even more. So, I mean, like, it's kind of crazy though that it's this early in the season. You're getting Boston 2-1, OKC 4-1 basically, and then New York 12-1. Like, that's just ridiculous.
Again, the odds makers have just called the race off. They have said that this is what? Let me see. What are you can get? You can call the matchup Celtics versus Thunder for only plus 420. That's low.
Crazy. That's sickening. But it's also, too, basketball is the one sport. In football, I would say, is a sport like this, but you only got one game. But basketball is the one sport where in a 7-game series, the better team tends to win because you have 7 games for the best players to show up. We saw it, like, last year in the finals. Like, Luka was great at times, right? The Mavericks were fine, like they won a game, right? But over the course of the series, Boston was just such a better team. Like, there's no world where the Mavs could have beat them in a 7-game series last year because the Celtics were just a better team.
Yeah, the only times in recent memory in which the team that wasn't the best team won the finals was when the Mavs beat the Heat in 2011 and when the Pistons beat the Lakers in 2004, although the Lakers were kind of falling apart at that point. Those are the only 2 times it's happened since like 1990, around that time. It doesn't happen. Like you said, it's not the NFL. It's not March Madness. When you have 7 games, it's impossible for the water and oil to not separate themselves. You're going to see who's better.
Yeah, definitely. So who wins tonight, Grant? NBA Cup.
Thunder, the safer bet, Tanner. I like what the Bucks are doing recently. I really do. So I would take them on the spread. I think it's going to be a very close game down the stretch. I think it comes down to maybe the final shot.
All right, Bucks +5, and then you can go over to what bowl game is this tonight? West Virginia and Memphis. What crappy bowl game are they playing on Tuesday night that nobody cares about?
Memphis and West Virginia, the Frisco Bowl.
The Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl at 9:00 tonight. I have no clue who's playing in this game. That's the thing about bowl games. I don't know who's playing. I have no clue. It's not even worth trying to guess who's playing. Somebody's going to be playing quarterback.
Bowl games now are only for the fans of that team. They're not for anybody else.
Yeah, and half your kids are out the door. So, anyways, Grant, take us out of here.
Guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Ride the Line. Tanner and I appreciate you all giving us your time. Like we mentioned on the next episode, we're going to be breaking down the top side of the college football playoff bracket. So if you want our thoughts on that matchup, if you want to hear who we're taking from a betting perspective, if you just want to be locked in for future episodes, then please hit the subscribe button. Also hit the like button on this video. It helps us out a lot. We will catch you all on the next episode of Ride the Line.